If you ask most people, they'd say reaching the NFL would be a career pinnacle, the top of the mountain. But for my guest today, the NFL was just the beginning. As a linebacker who played on 3 pro teams, retiring in 2015, Emmanuel Acho was just getting started. Turns out Emmanuel's calling was off the field, in missionary work, and more recently, social justice. Just under 2 years ago, Emmanuel decided to create and host an online video series of conversations about racism called Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. It's since been viewed more than 80 million times and went on to win an Emmy in 2021. And now Emmanuel is setting out to help others find meaning in their lives. Emmanuel, what a pleasure it is to have you on Making Space. I feel like you are our perfect guest because you are somebody who follows a part of you that isn't always your intellect. It isn't always your pro-con list. You go with something that is beyond that. Since you were a kid, let's go back. Since you were a kid and you were making decisions on where to go, what to do, what led you?
I've never been asked that question before. I am led by my convictions. And so when I say conviction, what do you mean? I'm led by some innate inner yearning to move, to act, to go. That's truly what led me. It's my convictions. And so if I ever feel convicted to move in a certain way, a certain direction, that is the manner in which I go. Sometimes it makes no practical sense at all. But I just feel like you have to move by convictions.
I mean, look, when you're a kid, you don't know what the risks are. There are no risks. You jump off the swing, you jump off, you'll realize later that hurt. But you're free because you don't know the risks. It's like someone who's never had their heart broken. They fall in love harder. How did you manage to keep that, even though you've been through disappointments, things that hadn't worked in your life?
What was it? Michael Jordan, who said, like, I missed so many thousands of shots. But nobody necessarily remembers the misses. It's Babe Ruth, who I believe said, your next strikeout only brings you closer to your next home run. I don't try to focus on my failures. The only true failure is in not getting up. The only true failure is in not trying. Hodo, I was thinking about it the other day after I failed at something recently, and I was like, I didn't fail, I fell. And as long as I get up, I win.
I love that. You're the child of immigrants. By the way, I have to let you know that when I was in 3rd grade, I went to school in Ibadan, Nigeria for a year. My dad was a professor there. Yeah, we went to school. Yes, we have such fond memories. It was just a year. As the child of immigrants, and I'm a child of immigrants too, I feel like there's something different that's in us. What did your parents give to you that led you to the man who you are today?
Well, when you travel the world and you see other parts of the world, your mind and the aperture of your understanding is just so opened. What did my parents give me? A certain resiliency. I just learned a different type of resilience. I learned a different type of understanding of how blessed we are in America. You don't really understand the American dream until you realize the nightmare is somewhere else. And I've just lived other countries' nightmares. And so I understand the difference in a dream.
And you've lived the American dream too, boy. Did you feel like this feels like my mountaintop?
You know, I didn't. The NFL was truly amazing. It was amazing. But unless you are in the top 5 percentile, the NFL, it too is scary. The reason I didn't feel like it was my mountaintop, I knew the NFL was a means to an end. Hold on, I like answering questions in story form. I vividly remember fearing I was going to be released every day I was in the NFL. The NFL, you have 53 people on a roster. Essentially, you have 53 employees. I was probably the 47th to the 53rd person on the roster as far as importance. Every Tuesday of an NFL week is when you get paid. So if you are on the roster on Tuesday, you know you are going to receive a check that week. So that means by Monday night, you likely will be released if you are going to be released. I was cut in the NFL 5 times before the age of 25. Imagine being hired at a job out of college, then being transferred across the country from that job, then being fired by your employer who transferred you and then being rehired and fired and rehired and fired and rehired and fired 5 times, all by the age of 25. So the NFL to me was so taxing. It was so anxiety heavy. The NFL was not a highlight of my life.
Oh, wow. Why did you stay in it as long as you did?
In the NFL, if you play for 4 years, you're vested pension and you have annuity. And so the NFL was practical. I was like, okay, play 4 years, you have all the benefits. As soon as I hit 4 years, I was like, it is time to get out of here.
So it was an easy decision. Simple.
Not at all. Not easy. Why? Because the NFL, it cripples every one of your abilities besides playing sports. That's what nobody tells you. Imagine you graduate with a degree, which, by the way, is already hard if you're trying to make it to the NFL because playing college sports is a full-time job. But imagine graduating with a degree, then whatever degree you graduate with, you have to put on ice for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10 years. So all of that knowledge which you have acquired is now gone to waste because you have been sitting here trying to play in the NFL. So transitioning is near impossible because it's all you've ever known. Every August, think about this, for 20 consecutive years, really 17, from when I was 8 years old until I was 25 years old, every August I was wearing a football helmet. Then you wake up one August day and you're not putting a helmet on. It's depressing. It's saddening. You go into dark places.
You talked about how you stayed in the NFL for 4 years so you could get vested, you could get this. You, to me, if I'm listening to you and not knowing anything about you, seem like a very logical guy. I love that your book is called Illogical because it really, there is something beyond a pro-con list in life. What kept you kind of jumping in the deep end, even if you knew the odds were against you?
Our greatest accomplishments in life come on the other side of our logic. So what is keeping me from my destiny? And that's really the way in which I operate. The scariest phrase that can ever be uttered is that's the way we've always done things, or that's the way I've always done things. And I just understand that our greatest accomplishments, my greatest accomplishment, your greatest accomplishment, I guarantee it'll come on the other side of my logic. So how can I be more illogical?
Well, I love that which you just dovetailed nicely into your uncomfortable conversations with a black man. I mean, this is something that you felt a burning desire to do. People told you it was not a good idea. They said no.
People close to
yes,
me. But this is yes. Imagine you are an athlete and you ask your coach what you should do, and your coach says don't do something. Imagine you are a child and you ask your parent what you should do, and your parent says don't do something. But I had a calling, and what I realized, Hoda, is my calling wasn't a conference call. My calling was my calling, and only I got that calling. Nobody else heard what I heard, and it wasn't audible. It was within my own soul, my own spirit, if you will.
How did you know that this was not something to ignore?
I knew it was not something to ignore because I didn't have the luxury of ignoring it. What lives were going to be lost because of my lack of speech? And I think we all eventually have to ask ourselves that question. And it might not be a literal loss of life like a death, but what dream won't be fulfilled because I'm too afraid to act, because I'm so bound by logic? It might be my own dream. It might be a community that I might change. It might be a family that I might impact. It might be a neighborhood. It might be a city. It might be a religious gathering. But like, who am I costing because of my lack of courage? So many people ask me, Hoda, Emmanuel, how do you find your calling? And after pausing and thinking, I said, your calling will call you. Just pick up. So many people are searching left and right. I don't know what my calling is in life. I don't know what my purpose is in life. I don't know what I'm meant to do. Yo, your calling will call you, and it probably already has. You're just not picking up. My calling literally called me. Matthew McConaughey, he called me from a no-caller ID number after my first episode of Uncomfortable Conversations got 25 million views. I picked up, Acho, McConaughey speaking. I want to have a conversation. I was like, what? Matthew McConaughey? He's like, yeah, I want to have a conversation. I was like, Okay, well, we'll record episode 2 in 4 days. True story, I did not want to do another episode of Uncomfortable Conversations because of how big the first one was. McConaughey says, let's record it tomorrow. After McConaughey calls me, I get another call from a no caller ID number. Hi, Emmanuel. Oprah Winfrey speaking. Oprah? Like Oprah? Emmanuel, what is your intention? She asked me.
What'd you say? That's good.
I said, Oprah, my intention is to change the world, and I truly believe I can. All of that to say to those listening, your calling will call you. You just have to make that a logical decision to pick up. My calling was a literal no caller ID calls, but other people's calling will just be that internal yearning and that internal desire to do something that just seems a little crazy.
You know, they say that when you find your calling, it's like you're riding a wave. Your whole life you swim upstream, and all of a sudden you find the thing that you're supposed to be doing, and suddenly you feel like all of the forces of the universe are taking you in the way you're supposed to be going. You're on this ride. Do you feel like that's what's happening, or are you swimming up?
Man, what's interesting, when you say riding a wave, I think there's an inherent sense of ease that seems like it comes with that. I do believe your calling is what you're made for, and your career is what you're paid for. Uncomfortable Conversations is the hardest thing I've ever had to do. So I can't say that I'm riding a wave because it's just so incredibly difficult. But your calling is just what you're made to do. But sometimes it is a detour. And Uncomfortable Conversations was a detour. It was not my destination. Illogical was my destination. Living a life and encouraging people to live their best life, that was my destination. I got my master's degree in sports psychology. So talking about, hey, let's all achieve the dreams we so desperately desire, that was my destination. Hoda, I just had to take a quick detour for the betterment of those around me.
I was reading a book, and they were talking about how that in this big field there was one wildflower growing, and that everything on God's earth knows exactly what it is supposed to do without being told or thought out. That wildflower wasn't meant to be famous or popular or make lots of money. That wildflower was meant to bloom in the middle of that field, face the sun, and make us all feel good. That was its purpose. And they said how people were the only thing in God's earth who don't really or have to sort of figure it out or spend our lives trying to be more like this one. I'm going to be like Oprah. I want to be like Denzel. I want to take a page from that. How is it that you were able to find, because it sounds like you have your voice, how did you find it, and how do you think people can find it? Because everyone wants to look like that one, dress like that one, be like that one.
It's in realizing that you have to be yourself because everybody else is already taken. And what I've realized is just I have to be the best version of me. And what you said is so wonderful about the wildflower. I think the problem we all collectively have as humans is we all have this innate desire to want to be like somebody else instead of simply being the best version of ourselves. And that is when I talk about, like, it's just conventional wisdom. Conventional wisdom says we should all do X, we should all do Y, we should all do Z. We should all go to high school, then we should all go to college, then we should all get a job, then we should all get married, then we should all have kids, then we should all live in a house behind a white picket fence. And the problem is conventional wisdom is limiting all of us, in my greatest opinion. Conventional wisdom is limiting us from the life that we all deserve to be living. And I just finally said, wait a second. Why am I going to live inside of someone else's box? Why am I going to let insignificant people have such significance in my life?
Clearly, faith is front and center with you. It comes out in almost every single answer that you are giving me. Sometimes it's obvious and sometimes it's subtle, but it's always there. How has your faith played in this journey of yours?
My faith has driven me in this journey, and what I believe is we all have faith. The question is, when you sit down in a chair, you have faith that that chair is going to hold you up. So we are all, to some degree, people of faith. My faith drives me because, one, I understand what I've put on this earth to do, and it's just to touch lives. It's to share the good news. It's to talk about Jesus when I can. But more than that, or not more than that, but in alongside with that, faith can be illogical. Like that's what people don't understand. Like, whether it is, think about this for a second. Noah was commissioned by God to build a boat and put every animal on it. because there was going to be a flood. Hoda, can you imagine how many people saw Noah building every day saying, bro, what the heck are you doing?
Right,
like, you are a fool. Until he looks out of the window and he puts his head up into the sky, and then he feels it between his brows, smack dab. It's the first drop of rain. And the first drop of rain tells him that the flood is coming. And I have a chapter actually titled The First Drop of Rain, because when you've been illogical, when I've been illogical, that first drop of rain is going to hit. And when that first drop of rain hits you, that is when you know the flood is coming. So what was my first drop of rain? That call from Matthew McConaughey. The call from Matthew McConaughey, I hadn't yet written a book. I hadn't yet heard from Oprah. I hadn't yet been a bestseller. I hadn't yet won an Emmy. I hadn't yet done anything besides a video. But when McConaughey called, that was my first drop of rain, and that was the signal that the flood is coming. So when you make that illogical decision, whether it's building a boat, whether it's sitting in front of a camera, whether it's starting a business, as soon as you get that first drop of rain, you know the flood is coming. And my faith literally moves me in life because it is testaments like that.
Wow, that is absolutely beautiful. And I know your book, Illogical, you say that's your calling. Like, that's what you're meant to do. You're meant to help. You're meant to heal. You're meant to encourage and cheerlead. I mean, that's so in your DNA. But there are a bunch of people, many people, and we've all been there ourselves too, if we're not there right now, you're lost. Like, things aren't working for me, and they're trying to figure out how to get up, how to pull up. I know you've got your faith, and you've also got your sports psychology degree. You've got a lot going for you. But how do you speak to someone like that?
Well, the first thing I would do is just encourage them that it's okay to not be okay. Like, it's okay to be down for a little bit. The reason a mountain has peaks is because it has valleys. If there were no valleys, then everything would just seem like flat and level ground. So the valley is actually what dictates the peak. I would also say that your time is coming, but you too have to make your time come. They say luck is when preparation meets opportunity. You can't win the lotto unless you buy a ticket. So you can sit there and hope and pray all you want to win the lotto, but you can't win the lottery unless you buy a ticket. So are you buying tickets? I could hope and pray all I want and wish to change the world, but it was sitting down in front of the camera that led to uncomfortable conversations. It took action.
Now, everyone who I've ever interviewed loves the high moments in life, but that's not obviously where they learn anything. They learn things on their deepest valleys. What was your deepest valley?
My deepest valley. Oh, gosh. Okay. Remember, I was in Philadelphia. I was drafted to the Cleveland Browns in 2012. In 2013, the Philadelphia Eagles, they traded for me. I was now in Philadelphia, but remember I told y'all I was cut 5 times by that organization. One of the final times I got cut, and what people don't realize about the National Football League, when you get cut, they instantly remove your access from the building. You can no longer go into the building for anything, from a Gatorade shake to a workout to anything. I lived in Philadelphia. I lived very close to the Rocky Steps, but I still wanted to continue playing. So, true story. After I got cut, I believe it was the second to last time, I would have to go to an abandoned field to work out. I showed up one day, and the field is covered in nothing but pigeons. I didn't have bags. In football, you need bags about 5 feet long and 1 foot high to just do different drills over. You might need to hop over the bag. You might need to sprint in front of a bag, then backpedal behind another one. Just do different drills. I didn't have bags, so I had to steal street cones, construction orange street cones. So now imagine, I used to be this NFL player on Monday, but on Tuesday, I'm in an abandoned field, shooing pigeons off of the field, stealing construction cones, laying these construction cones on this field that was once overrun by pigeons, and I'm working out by myself, knowing that 20 minutes across town, all of my teammates and my best friends are there. Those were the lowest moments of my life. Man, I kept it up until I got another call, and the Eagles called me back, and they signed me again. But then I broke my thumb, and after I broke my thumb, I'm having surgery, and I knew one of two things. If they had to put pins in my thumb, the Eagles were going to release me. Because if they put pins in my thumb, I could not play because pins protrude from the skin. So you can't put a bandage on it and play with it. If they put screws in my thumb, I could still play because with screws, you could put a club on your hand and still play. So immediately after my surgery operation, I wake up and I look at the doctor and all I ask him is, pins or screws? Because if he says pins, the Eagles were going to release me for the final time. If he says screws, then I am still going to be employed. I wake up still partially sedated and I just say pins or screws, and he says pins. I start weeping. I go to the Eagles facility. The general manager meets me at the front door and he says, "Hey, Emmanuel, coach wants to see you. Bring your playbook." That means you're getting released. With my left hand, I now have to pack up my locker for the final time. I have a huge trash bag with tears down my eyes and my hand casted. And for the final time, I left the Philadelphia Eagles facility. Funny enough, and interestingly enough, for those interested in that story, I lead the book, Illogical. The chapter starts with pins and screws. And so the very first chapter is pins and screws.
I feel like God was busy trying to tell you all along that it was time to say goodbye to football, but you just wouldn't you weren't listening. Remember you said you got to listen? You were like this, not yet. I need pins or screws. I need to get down to the end. I need my 5 times.
It was terrible.
But
truly terrible.
But that does, Emmanuel, bring you to that thing, which, again, I keep going back to, which is how do you know if God's trying to tell you to work harder, which is what you were doing all those 5 times or how do you know if he's trying to tell you pivot, time to pivot now?
How do you know when it's time? I think when you have exhausted your emotional, your financial, and your spiritual bandwidth, and it's like, you know what? Unless this works, and if this is not blessed, I am going to move on.
You know, just back to your book for a minute, Illogical. What do you hope that people? I know there's a lot of great life lessons in there, and I don't even know where to begin with them, quite frankly, because every time I turned a page, I was like, highlighter, but it's got really good original ideas. But give me a couple that you think that people would like to take away.
Along your illogical journey, so many people are going to tell you what you can't do instead of what you can do, and you are going to need to block out that noise. So do not ever forget your earmuffs. So on your destiny towards being the best version of yourself and living the life of your dreams, you're going to have a might be crazy moment. We already discussed that first drop of rain moment. When you are being illogical, there's going to come a point in time when you have and you experience that first drop of rain, which tells you your success is coming. True story. In 6th grade, I was at my friend's house and we were eating burgers. His older brother walked in and he threw something at the table. My dear friend ran from the table and started hiding behind a chair. I was like, what in God's name is going on? I looked at what his older brother threw at the table and it was simply a ketchup packet. I cracked it open after checking up my friend and I started eating my fries with some ketchup. At that point in time, I learned a valuable lesson that day, Hoda. Don't be afraid of other people's fears.
Ooh,
don't be afraid of other people's fears. And so many of us in life are afraid of other people's fears. Well, I'm not going to start a business because my friend was afraid to. Yeah. I'm not going to get in a relationship because my homegirl got cheated on. I'm not going to get married because my dad and my mom I've never seen a successful relationship. I can't leave this city. Nobody in my family has ever left Austin, Texas. Why would I leave? I refuse to fly in an airplane because so-and-so is afraid of flying on an air. We're so afraid of other people's fears, not even our own. It's the craziest thing. We're not even afraid of our own fears.
The book is called Illogical. It's by Emmanuel Acho. He's got great conversations. You can find him everywhere. You're making your mark. Look at you. You're blazing your trail. Get out of your way.
Thank you, my friend.
Emmanuel, thank you. It was wonderful talking to you. I enjoyed every second.
Likewise.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Find your favorite recipes, celebrity interviews, uplifting stories, shop our favorite deals, and so much more with the Today app. Download it now.